My name is Micaiah Stevens. Welcome to game design number 16. Work on a game called Hamlet for Haven Studios. We just released a major update, version 18, and already working on version 18.1. So started implementing a lot of these design ideas pretty quickly now into the game. So we've been talking about this RPG design. Started this about a month and a half ago. Working on the I wouldn't say the design document for the game we've been working on, but sort of the background of, in RPG. We started out thinking about, learned game design and programming for a very long time, and then we kind of said, hey, we want to work on a Steam release game, sort of a full PC release game. Was the goal, and we sat down and said, well, we have RPG and sci-fi, and RPG went out, so we've been doing a lot of these. I love RPGs, especially castles, which is kind of what we're talking about today. So anyways, we got through with world building. We'll see a little bit of that, quite a bit of that actually, in this sort of as well. And we talked about castles and sort of the ideas behind them in a little bit, but now and then we talked about for 12, and then for 13 we talked about dungeon design, or 14 was item bloat, sort of the idea, anyways, we've already seen these, and then 15 last week, and then we're on 16 castles. This is also bugging me with this space here. So castles is kind of a really interesting, because it's such a massive, cool topic, and I guess too, here, let me copy this. I think it's already in the. It's such it's one of my favorite. I have no idea what that is. Oh, I guess. Sorry, a little distracted here. Anyway, so let's focus and talk about Shadowversary. No, come on. Yeah, Shadowversary has been, like, his entire channel has been really amazing. I've been watching him, quite a bit. Big, huge inspiration from a lot of these, and you'll see a lot of influence, a lot of pictures from his, and that's kind of what this is. Like the Winterfell Castle was pretty good, but this is specifically talking about. It's actually the Winterfell Castle design. Anyway, so we'll get a lot of from Game of Thrones. We'll get a lot of that coming through. Mostly it's just talking about castles and how they fit, and we'll be talking about the aesthetics. We're actually on this design. No, right here. It's kind of, we'll be talking a lot about aesthetics. Like, for instance, this is really cool. We like the dark themes of it, and it's sort of the Winterfell Castle. It just looks really cool. This kind of, I'm not sure how these topics will handle, but I got a few we'll focus on. But here's another interesting one. Oftentimes the whole point of castles is to withstand sieges, so this is a pretty good, like a game board, sort of a battle layout where you have your infantry line up to. And then you have the battering rams and stuff to start taking on the walls. I thought this is a really cool render. I like some of the design work, and then the meticulations, as Shadowversary talks about, is I guess what these are called. We'll have a big. But the other thing too about this is sort of the tents and sort of the idea of the army and what it kind of looks like in the battlefield. And then we also talk about inspiration. This is from the Winterfell, but he talks about the siege engineers. It talks quite a bit about siege engineers. We'll hopefully get a little bit of building design from them. I might be one of the next. We'll probably hit upon that at some point. I don't think we will have buildings, but it's just the general idea. Anyway, so these are just interesting. It's a kind of a whole. You could see the world's more 3D sort of, and you have a character that runs around, and then you build up castles. And we really enjoy siege engineers, space engineers. But it's pretty good. We're not, it's a fun game, but we're not as excited as some people are. Anyway, so then we just have a ton of different castle designs. This is kind of like a little watchtower, sort of. I'll probably get a lot of these names wrong. The whole video is great for talking about what these are and their proper names for them. Is kind of from the history. Anyways, the idea is just a kind of a moat and a little. It doesn't have to be huge. This is just sort of a watch post. And then we've been talking about this quite a bit. This is the keep. We've been calling this the keep and Bailey. This is sort of this is the starter of the keep, and here's the Bailey. This town supports it. We've been talking about royalty lives up here. This is kind of nice because we like the early idea of castles where it's just a walled fort. Is probably how it would start. So that seems great because we'll probably start in a game. We're still kind of unsure about this pack. I guess it's not talking about Hamlet. This is kind of where Hamlet's going, as we're calling it. This is the Hamlet 1.0 version is our goal. Yeah. So anyway, so we'll continue on. This is also probably a really one of the major points of these videos here. We hope. Where you have this world, this kind of what the main thing we need to focus on next is the world building idea. You can see that there's roads, or kind of we talked about that in our game a little bit, but that's kind of one of the major things we're working on. We have different ideas for that, but it's kind of a little in the 3D world. Our roads are because they are node based. They are kind of they can't be curved kind of like this per se, but we'll have to figure out how that's going to work. Anyways, and then you can see the farming, the fields that go on, and then we have this little tiny watchtower which has this bridge, this sort of for convenience factor, and then they have the way to get up into the watchtower, and then they have the a few guards here. We also like this idea too because we'll see many examples of this. Where the castle starts out as a small watchtower, maybe, and then it will grow into a bigger area with stables and blacksmiths and more military buildings to support them. And then this is sort of a lot of these are you can sort of see the dark. I haven't. This kind of feels pretty good. It's some of these wooden these are pretty rare. These wooden buildings, so we are. It's kind of one of the focuses here, but the colors kind of feel like, and this is kind of like, it kind of feels, it's probably more of a real life shot, but it could be part of a game, but, and then smoke and stuff like that, but, and then water, and then sort of roads again, and the grassland. It's kind of it feels like a lot of games look like this, where it's just kind of grass. It does a pretty good job. I mean, for someone who's partially blind, it's hard to tell the difference here in the grass, but it's definitely, we'll have to see how we can get that fine balance between having the world look like it has grass. Like kind of this is kind of what we more would see, like where I'll have tufts of grass, trees, and timber is actually going to be one of this is kind of what's a really good starting town again with the wooden thing. But then as we go on, some of the stonework here, we feel it's a little washed out. These are probably whitewashed things, might be great, but we kind of feel like the darker themes are a little bit more the style we're going to go for. So we might get a little bit more dark grays and things like that. But here's another example of a rocky cliff face where there's a ton of stone anyways, and then they sort of collect it all together and start building this castle. This kind of has this major watchtower with these. It's pretty small. And it's kind of cool. Part of the thing about this is like getting the watchtower here to fit up with these walls, and then we I don't see the walls, but they have the ramparts up top here for the defenders. So we'll see. Anyways, then one of the other things too about the biggest thing we like to focus on is these crowns of the watchtower. That's one of our favorite features. Not sort of like the frivolous versions like this, but we like the hard edge version like this. So here's just another watchtower. These are sort of outposts or lookout towers, which are great. And then here you can sort of see, like, this is kind of reminds me of the castle piece, but it's like you get this rounded door area, and then it kind of goes loops around. That's part of how do we get this into the game. Is another challenge for us, is that we have this node. This is great, and then it's 3 nodes high. For a person, that's about 6 feet or 7 feet or whatever for a good height. Also, too, I was thinking like maybe there's this is intended to be a horse on rider would actually a few of these you feel like they're horse on riders would actually be able to ride right through, and then you can horse your stable. Anyways, we go on to another little different design. The rampart's a little bit just kind of more like a fort or some sort of different, um, like a defensible position where you can hold out for a long time, um, and it's pretty cool. But it's a little less traditional. Here's another example of a very. A lot of these are worn down because it's really old too. This is probably, and then you can see here's the meticulation. Meticulations are just where you can drop if a besieger is attacking right here. You can drop stones on them. But yeah, so it's like yeah, it's just another different example of. I think this is a little too compact for us, but it might be interesting. The thing too is like trying to get gameplay out of this. Like if this was a rampart area, then it's like can you get to this area? Because if you can't get to the area, then it's not really has much gameplay value for me. I like this one right here. Uh, is kind of why this is another one. I think this is another one from him. Why watchtowers were so rare. But I really like the art style. Really feels like it fits. It's more Romanish with the tiled roofs here. The clay versus the wood. Uh, well, fired clay, anyways. But I still think it's. And then it's kind of one thing we've been thinking about ladders a lot recently. Like if we want to get up into the watchtower, you can get into the ladder, and then two of the ladder can be pulled up, and then it's pretty simple. And um, we might see some of these as well. Here's that keep and Bailey. So here's the. This is kind of talking about the idea of the reasons why is that these are two separate concepts. Here's the keep, and then here's the Bailey, and then we can sort of see that in other dimensions. But so maybe like you'll see we've seen this before with just a little watchtower on a hill surrounded by some sort of, and then again it's wooden fences, which will probably be our first take. So it's moat and Bailey. Raised earth on top sits a keep, and then a Bailey is a village that supports the keep. Is basically the general idea. This is actually one of the coolest screenshots I think there's a couple of these, but here's just basically it's kind of exactly the kind of gameplay we think is really awesome. We have these two. This is perfect because it's one island that has a seaport that is great, and then it also maybe connects. This might actually be another jutty of land, but then it's like it's kind of this nice seaport here. This rock face that sits on the sea, and then you have this ditch that could be filled with water, and then you got this small. This is kind of another example of a keep and Bailey, but you can see now that we have sort of it's wooden fences around it with wooden bridges, and then we sort of expand from there into the much more traditional castle sense where you have walls, ramparts, watchtowers out of stone. It seems like, and I think there's yeah. So here's and you can see the dock sort of here, and then at some point they build a brand new dock over here, and you can see the old dock, and now the town is much more like this entire town is, so it's like encapsulated the Bailey, and they've removed it and sort of maybe have another old town or new town over here. Anyways, and then it goes up to another level here where there's more internal buildings, more military outposts that are maintained. Yeah, so I think this is one of the this is kind of the exact sort of idea we're having here. That you can even see like that's what we talk about in our screenshot way up here, is that it's like, oh, that's a keep and Bailey right here. Here's the Bailey. And here's the keep, but the keep is kind of, we talk about a lot of this is royalty. Maybe we'll live up on this hillside, maybe because it's a little bit higher defended. We're not sure how we're going to get the roads and sort of places to work. We're not doing like a Kingdom Come Deliverance or like a Siege Engineers has like a free roaming like third person camera or whatever it may be, and it's like has much more ability to. We're a roguelike in the traditional sense, so it's hard for us to imagine that we're going to have these curves like this. Um, but we might have to figure out. We'll have to see. We're going to pick up this eventually. A lot of it's just sort of, but you can sort of see here's the starter area where it's like it just starts out as a town, a little bit royal town up here, and then we've got this small village down here, and then as it expands down here, you can see that they maybe expand that into actually building a proper keep up there at some point, either just a small one first, and then start encasing it in walls, and then you can see the walls on the outside. But then as they expand out, then you get this full-fledged town with walls even around the other area, and maybe they'll tear down the old town and then rebuild or do various things. Anyway, so then we have this just a nice little um, how and why Castle was rented, which is probably just a lot of promo pieces, which just talk about arrow loops, portcullises, the gates that come down, um, for the sieging, they'll shut the doors, and the doors will be open for business, and drawbridges will be down. But then as they'll shut the door and then shut the iron bars, and then they'll raise the drawbridge, which sort of fit right in here. It's definitely something we want to think about, but and then we also have these. This is another pretty good example of the archers, where you can sort of hunker down here and then shoot out, and then we've got these matriculations, which is probably a horrible way to say it, but anyway, so you can drop down and sort of fit. And then there's also another example here of the realistic, talking about the flared bases, that you wouldn't just have a. This is actually interesting too, because this actually gives this a room, a bigger room, and then a smaller room, and then a smaller room. So we just need that sort of artwork to fit on that, and then you can sort of again, we'll see the how it fits. And there's like this room here and a room here, or maybe just one room here, and with arrows, so the people can stand right here. And then they have and then it's just the turrets, and then here's the tower, and so you have a couple turrets, depending on how the. Here's another really great example. This one's just beautiful in terms of the style and art, and just how dark and rough it looks, and it's not really white, and I just love the overall stormy look too. Where it's like you can get those larger. This is one thing we need to really work on, is you get the larger sense of, wow, there's an island out there, but it's like covered in fog and mist, and then this is kind of cool too, where there's I don't know if this is another castle. It feels like another castle, or yeah, I guess it is. So maybe this is kind of a I don't know. Anyway, so but just the idea is just how dark and cool this looks, and you got these really really amazing um, bases, which are interesting as well. And we like this. This is more of the Romans times, but you can. This is really interesting too, where and this is sort of like the idea of these Roman forts, were sort of where the Roman soldiers lived, but they have these, but it's also very defensible. And you can see that here's the drawbridge, and it's sort of the start of castles. And it's just sort of a way to keep the army and sort of control the like Britain. I think a lot of the early Britain probably looked a lot like this as well. And then yeah, so and here's another example. A lot of these are earthen rings as well. We didn't talk about that, but they pile up earth, and then there's sort of like these sod houses as well. So you got sod houses, you got wood houses, and you got clay houses. So it's kind of a different another example, which is really cool, of sort of the progression that we can sort of, and that's sort of the idea here, is we're trying to get this ideas of progression. Like we start out with these dirt forts, and then you can see like the dirt forts are cool, and then they come around and they start putting stones on the outside of this, and then the dirt, these. Our castle walls might be hollow on the inside. We'll have to decide, but most castle walls were probably not hollow. They had these dirt filled areas, and it's partly because I think of this, where you have this dirt wall, and then you encase that in stone, and then seal it, and that sort of. And this is also that same interesting idea. Here's another watchtower that's sort of a wooden watchtower that's going to be slowly built up, and here's they're building more buildings, and here's a little it's kind of semi-Romans, but it feels like a barracks or some training area or something like that. Yeah, and here's another. I think we have this is kind of another of the castle, wood castle designs. We're looking at a lot of those because we want to get the different, in the tents as well. This is sort of more to like a fort area where they would start first, and we're thinking about doing the tents. We have some gameplay for tents. These mini watchtowers. We have this wood fort watchtower. It's difficult to figure out how to get in and out of these areas. Maybe we'll have a ladder, and then the character will just instantly climb up to the the watchtower, and then be able to climb up to here, and then you'll be able to walk around in the 9x9 area, and then shoot out as well. Um, and then the AI maybe will teleport as well around. They'll come to they'll rush out of their tents to their assigned areas, and then hit their teleport spot, which will climb. And eventually, I'll have climbing and various more mechanics like that. But kind of the idea is to build this defensive siege area, which is definitely. And then here's another example of I think this is maybe not, but there's more different examples of moat and baileys and keeps and stuff. And then you have this. This is interesting. I think a lot of these wood bridges are like for the start, and then if you want to, you burn them down. I think is what people would probably do. Is like they would just kick off this, bring up the raise the raise the drawbridge, and then just set this entire thing on fire. So now you don't get this nice path up there. You get this steep hill. You have to fight against archers and stuff like that. And then you'll have a lot of these too. I think you talked about that. These are this Hamlet, and this kind of like the idea that we're kind of building up to this idea that you start out as a small settlement, sort of from whatever reason, and you build up to this farming community that then puts in a sort of royalty comes in, or you get bigger and bigger, and you have to expand your government, and then a lot of these you can see maybe these houses were built here, but then now they're sort of trying to enclose the walls and protect them. Here's another example of that's just a sort of farming community or village, just a little tiny hamlet that's part of it's kind of like that Hamlet 2.0 I talked. I'm not. It probably would be feasible to get all that together. It just depends, but part of it is just having the idea. We talked about royalty will just be this concept that they have this separate area that they own and they run, and then you can interact with them, and then the main goal is to build up this town. Here's another really good. This one's you can just kind of. They got the sod. It's just kind of like the art style is different, but this one like feels like it's just so much more darker and cleaner, and it kind of looks almost the exact same. But anyway, and then we'll have to see. This one's kind of a little bit more defensible. So if this is the outer wall, and then if this is breached eventually, or the walls are taken, then you can fall back and then defend this, and then fall back and just defend this. And anyways, here's a really cool. I thought this was a really cool example of a character. Felt like a character concept that you would have a. It's like also this bow was kind of like, wow, that feels like a real game where it's like you got this crazy bow, this legendary bow or something that's just massive, and then you got arrows, and then you sort of. But then the bow also represents their colors as well. Maybe it's just simple as that. And then here's another example of a farming village area that sort of starts up, and then it starts building into that. And then you also got these traders with donkeys and carts and stuff. That's actually just starting to go into my game right now. We haven't got the donkeys in, but we've got the packs and the travel and the weight and all that. So that's going to start adding a lot of cool gameplay. Anyways, that's the extent of the castle discussion. I think there was a couple more things we want to talk about. One was this Kingdom Come Deliverance. This game is actually really cool in terms of the art, but it's pretty. I think it's rated mature, so it's got just a lot of you know, unnecessary. I mean, it's pretty violent, vicious times, but we're kind of making more of a fun adventure game. And these are RPGs versus a roguelike. It's really fun to see these sort of simul. I'm not sure how well the town is simulated. It feels a little bit more Skyrim-ish maybe, but that's one of the focuses we want to focus on is the town folks. These feel like they put a lot of terms in graphics and detail, but then they don't put in the. It's like an inch deep. And I haven't really played this game, but the point of this is sort of on the horseback too. I think that's a horse or a dog or something. Anyway, so you can also do horseback riding, and there's a lot of cool countrysides and stuff like that. Yeah, there is horseback riding and there's actually a the DLC for this called wow, there's a lot of DLC. I think it might be called From the Ashes. Yeah, see, yes. Uh, yeah, entirely new type of adventure. You have an opportunity to participate in doing a nil village from the ground up. So it's kind of exactly the sort of, and it's interesting too, sort of the type of thing that we're sort of trying to imbibe here, is that where you're sort of building up this town from the ground up. For various reasons, but the main thing about this too is talking about these castles, and you can really walk around in them, and they've got toilets, and the Shadowversary goes through the Kingdom Come Deliverance as well. So that's just really really cool. Yeah. So let's get yeah. It's just a lot of these wood forts. This is kind of maybe a great example of where we're going to go next. The tents we have are sort of a plan, and maybe we should start working on that. Sort of this idea. I kind of like the idea of like sort of the tents as the survival aspect of it, where it's like you would, as a soldier, ex-soldier, whatever, you would just set up a tent, um, out in the wilderness to sort of camp out for the night, and then, but yeah, and then this one's kind of really cool, and then you have, you know, um, and then too, I think one of the things too is about joining this military outpost and then going out on patrol, and we'll have to see. But yeah, this is kind of like this is a little bit more like Kingdom Come Deliverance. I don't remember what this is, but it's just really cool, and I just love the art style and the depth of it. And like, there's so much going on here. This kind of the Hamlet 2.0 or Hamlet 1 or 2, yeah, 2.0 is talking about the castles, and then 3.0 is talking about the kingdoms where you have multiple castles. Anyways, I want to get back up to this. Yeah, but then this is kind of where we really want to go. Is like you start out building this. This is kind of maybe 1.0ish or 2.0, where you start building a castle. Will definitely come in 2.0, but then it's like more like you're trying to build up this village here that's going to get bigger and bigger, and then as the village is absorbed in the castle at some point. But yeah, here's another really amazing. And you can see there's just so much gameplay here. It's like you have gates, you have guards that have they're resting, sort of waiting. They'll come up here every once in a while, look out, and sort of protect this area. But yeah, and then we get to the actual. Yeah, here's our sort of our focus. I think this is kind of more the art style we're gonna get. I wish it was a little bit more darker, but as we add in more, and you can see the fog as well, is great. So it really helps kind of sell the larger world. But then you sort of, so we have a couple different ideas, that this castle is under siege, and that's why you're sort of under siege, but you can build up this town as it's under siege. So you're sort of like they're trying to starve you out, but you're sort of still tasked with building up the town, um, and then various mechanics like that. And then maybe it's another tier is you're in a castle and it's under siege as well. So, but yeah, so this is kind of really just the fun. You start with a well and a building, and then you build up much better, and then including these. And there's also just the idea that when the game starts out, you're not under siege, but you're just sort of a lone survivor, and then you build up through this various things. And then the thing too is about this is having like this is really sparse here, which is kind of it's great, but it's also kind of nice in the fact that we have a lot of homes for people to own, and a lot of businesses that they can work at, including having maybe four, 2 people in each watchtower as well. So it's 2, 4, 6, 8 guards, and then maybe 4, 6 guards roaming the city or manning the gates as well. A couple guards manning the gates as well, and then those guards have homes. Maybe I don't see any barracks, but maybe we'll have some barracks that where a lot of guards will live. But then each guard also maybe have maybe it's just it's sort of the guard has a house and he has a wife and child, and there the wife's doing something, tending sheep, or kids learning how to grow up and be a soldier as well. So it's like this whole community is band together and try to build something. And so yeah, so that's part of the Hamlet sort of idea, and I think this embodies this immensely. And then we also have this futuristic plans to sort of include royalty and more things like that. So, and then guards also includes laws and also protect the citizens as well. So maybe there are some bad citizens, bad actors in the community, but the guards don't know that per se. But they have to protect everybody. Maybe the bad actors are sort of pretending to be good, and so it's like there's a lot of really fun gameplay here that's really centralized around this Hamlet idea, which is kind of, and then also too, it's like you have a lot of crafting, you have and trading as well. So you have maybe you'll need to collect. You'll have to. There's a mine that will have to go mine out, or those more logs to be gathered, and stone too as well. Maybe that they'll be mining stone in mass quantities, trying to build up to this start building castle walls. So maybe they'll start out here and start building, or they'll probably actually start up here. So they'll start, and you can maybe see this is inset, so we can actually start laying out stone, around the outside as well. So that's also part of that futuristic crafting and sort of gathering ideas that the village could be part of. Anyway, so it's a pretty large, extensive. Anyways, also a big shout out to Shadowversary. This guy's pretty fun. Really makes. And he also has this video on building the Conan Castle somewhere. Yeah, so he has just lots of. He has a lot of cool. A lot of cool themes, ideas, and topics here. They're kind of my game. Talking about the RPG character design, and like, is that really logical? And he goes into every single, much more details into weapons, and are these weapons real? I think part of it is like, I just get the sense of the word that he's thinking about it from like his perspective. Like, is this legitimate? Like, I haven't actually seen this, but is this legitimate? But he doesn't really think like this person right here probably is representing a much more, I think one was the double-edged battle sword from right here from Thanos. But then you got to remember, Thanos is not just some human guy that's like, he's a super god or whatever that can, that has massive strength and so and agility and ability. So for us, this would be impossible, but for Thanos, and a lot of these things too, and it sort of has roots as well, that the Goliath from the Bible was said to be like 12 feet tall, and wear a suit of mail or a copper mail of 100 300 pounds or what. It was just massive. So is that feasible for me and you? No, but for someone that's kind of like in a much different and then too, this guy here, he's not some um, some kid like skinny kid like me, although maybe we got the same height, but he's got the just massive muscle build. So can he hold the one hand like this? Probably, but not for long. But then also too, he's trained for this for his whole life. That's part of this as well. Like this guy has held that sword in his hand, maybe not this sword, but held a sword in his hand for 20 years of his life. So is it hard for him to hold that sword? No, but because he's done it for that long. But then maybe he's upgraded to this sword because he likes it, and he's used that for 5 years. So it's like Just and imagine just he's that's what he does, and then he wields it in battle too, and that's sort of I get what he's saying a little bit though. I'm on a major tangent here, but it's something. Well, I think part of it is like that will be included. Like we included bunny slippers, so I think we've opened up the gates of unlimited crazy equipment. We'll probably dial it back and have various things, and then also, but that also we'll also have to decide pretty quickly about sort of where our gear is going to go and whether it's going to be like strength based or it's probably going to be simple at first and we might expand out later. But anyways, the point being is that yeah, so like also from a pure game point of view, like it's just fun and cool, even if it's not realistic. Which I'm sure he has a very fine balance with that, with a lot of his cool things. So anyway, so I just thought this was just really awesome. And one of the next things we'll probably talk about is his Conan castle design. I don't know. We might. Oh yeah, here's another thing we talked about: the dungeons. Why fantasy dungeons are stupid. This is just I love this video. Him and Lindy Berg in our dungeon design. And then here's another thing on One Castle. So we probably should watch that as well. So yeah, it's just awesome to see someone really have art and love of this. This is one of my favorite subjects as well. This is the oh, here's another one. There's also a historical thing. Yeah, here's the one about the Conan Castle Vanberg, and it shows. He talked about this. Let's see if I can preview. Oh no, that was it. No, yeah, we are muted. So, oh no, we're not. No, sorry. Let's see if I can get this. Yes. Yeah. So this is kind of this. Let's see. Let's see if I can get a. Yeah, he talks about this really cool where he likes the Conan design system because it's sort of, and we've actually been playing with that for a while. We're not going to have building in our system. It's just kind of a preview to what he's talking about here. Well, obviously we have to put in flying, but is there a way to? Maybe it was in the other video. I think it was in the other video. My bad. Anyway, so that's probably going to be one of the discussions we will have hopefully pretty soon. Yes. Yeah, I think this is the one we're talking about. Yeah, this is exactly the one I should be focused on for. And he also does talk about siege engineers as well, but I think. Yeah, so Rust is also another, is kind of where they design the system, but you can sort of see that it's equal out of triangles, that the triangle is the same face as the, like right here is a great example. So here's the foundation, and then this triangle piece is the same width as the foundation. So it's like it just makes, and then you can put a foundation right here to snap to, and then, yeah. And then so he builds this entire castle, and then using this sort of design as well. So using these, so this one's pretty cool for a shield design, maybe another different shield design, but then you actually get these really cool castles. It sort of falls flat, and these are some really cool. It falls flat, and he also has some node-based castle designs, which look really cool as well. Over here, as you can see that there. That's sort of what we're thinking about here is like these walls are 1 meter by 1 meter, so they're 1 meter walls, and then we have 1, 2, and 3 meter walls, and it sort of it fits with our system, but then this is like much more cooler in terms of the build style, but then on these where it's like you build out these simple objects, and then yeah, here's kind of one of the examples of siege engineer. Does it like this, which is great for circular, but then it doesn't fit within, and it's cool for like that, and then but you got this sort of rough edge here, where you got this uneven square. I think these anyway. So what our challenge though is like this is one node piece, and we can't. And then maybe this is 1, 2, 3, but then we can add in a node for an entrance, or this is 1, 2, It just feels difficult. So we're gonna have to figure out how to manage that. And here's another. This is talking about the rounded castle ideas, which is kind of great, but it's like we're gonna have trouble with these rounded castles and rounded stairs and stuff. But so we're gonna have to figure out how to overcome that challenge. That's something I didn't mention that this whole time, but that's part of one of the biggest challenges for us right now. Is like we love the 3D feeling open world sort of ideas, but then we're working on a node system. So it's how do we incorporate those two and make those two talk to each other. I don't think there's a way to do it yet. Like this, how do you could do maybe a different style, but you could have this like this little tiny section here, like where the mouse pointer is, um, be the square that's butted up against that round. Because once you have so many rounds, that there's, I think he actually has that over here. Um, that you have right here. You can sort of see that there's from here to it's 1, 2, 3. It's like you get this. Um, Even though this is kind of less, but anyway, so it's but in his perspective, but in reality, this is supposed to be, 1, 1, and 1 here, and 1, and 1. So it's like you can have the squares be on the outside edge of that, but kind of that's sort of. Anyways, we'll have to see. Maybe I'll do some SketchUps or just, I don't know. We'll have to see what we can accomplish. There's some great turn-based games have already kind of tried to handle that as well. So, um, and yeah. So I think this is great and it's cool for a build system. Like you can see how fun it is to um, I definitely like this. Where is that block? And it's all based kind of on the similar to the Rust build system, but this well, kind of like the idea here. It's like you have this square piece, which is 1 meter we've been talking about, and then we have this triangle that fits in 1 meter. So yeah, so then the 1 meter is kind of a square 1 meter, and the triangle fits in that. But we'll have to see. Anyways, it's definitely but you can sort of see like the entrance here. It's kind of more like 1 or 2 meters. This is a 2 meter by 2 meter foundation in our example here, and a 2 meter door, which kind of feels weird. Definitely, you need at least another third meter here because that feels so like a half. Maybe my perspective's off. Maybe it could be 1, 2, 3, but and this could be 3 by 3. But yeah, I guess it kind of feels. Maybe it's a 3 by 3 and it wouldn't be so bad, but from the perspective, and that's a lot of this too is perspective as well. Like when you're looking at a game like this, how do you sort of get that really good focus on the perspective, not so much on the perspective, get caught up in this perspective versus, you know, and this probably partly it is like getting caught up on the node base when we don't, we just build and I think a lot of it is that rogue like feels like you're moving from node to node. I think the coolest 3D example I saw of that was the the turn-based game we were talking about a few weeks ago, where it's like you could see the enemy sort of in that his tile, no, his 3D world space tile in his 1 meter by 1 meter, and he hopped into the next one. Anyway, so hopefully we'll have some more on that next time. It's definitely a couple of the challenges we probably won't build the build system like this, but that's kind of a preview. Anyway, so this video is probably an hour, not 45 minutes. Anyway, so hopefully castles is your favorite subjects as well. It's just trying to build a castle is a very long-term goal for me. A couple of years from now, but we've already put in an early look at the castles, but we're just trying to get the blocking feel for it and try to get the sense of scale in it. And it's going pretty good, but we definitely need to figure out how to get the graphics in there as well, and how to get the because even though these are, these foundational pieces are simple, and then, the 3 by 3 meters or whatever they are, they're probably 2 by 2. Anyways, it's tough to say, but you can still see they have spikes and, feel to them for Ronan, for Conan, the castle, the Anyway, so I guess that's probably good enough. So hopefully you got a good idea of castles and what we're thinking about and sort of talking about the design of them and a lot of it too is comes down to what I think is cool and what I think is fun and even if it's not realistic where they whitewash the castle walls, it looks really bland for me. So I want to cooler castles. Anyways, take care.